to learn how to spell her last name, to pronounce it, giving directions to go to India, except that your destination is Nandia, so you say go right to Nandia, which I think is a very helpful explanation. She's an independent leadership consultant and coach who is interested in perfecting her speaking skills. So welcome,
I can still remember that day walking home from school, first grade, Philadelphia, and finding my mom in a strangely giddy mood. Mijita, your dad has been transferred to Rome. We're moving in a couple of months. What's Rome? It's this wonderful place across the ocean filled with art and culture and beauty. Alarms went off in my 6-year-old brain. She just seemed a little too happy. Do they have Scooby-Doo and the Flintstones in Rome? I'm sure they do. And with that, my journey to becoming a third culture kid started. I know you're thinking, Maria, it's been quite a while since you've been a kid, obviously. So what is a third culture kid? It's usually defined as someone who spent a significant part of their developmental years in a culture other than that of their parents or their nationality. So thinking about a third culture kid, I'm one of them. My parents were one of the first wave of immigrants that came from Cuba, thinking that they'd only spend a few months here until the Bay of Pigs invasion. But we all know how that worked out. So my parents became Philadelphians, sucked up the cold weather, learned how to scrape ice off of their car, and never went back to Cuba. I remember Rome fondly. It was a wonderful place, and I made a good friend, Claudia, who was my neighbor. And the way that children usually do, we were able to get over the language barrier, but we learned that there were more than a few false cognates between Spanish and Italian. So when Claudia would say to me, let's go play with La Pala, I'd run to my room and find a shovel, thinking we were gonna dig up some critters. And she looked at me and said, Maria, La Pala. Oh, it's a ball. Or sometimes I'd laugh, I couldn't help but giggle when we were at a restaurant and a waiter might say to my parents, would you like some burro for your bread? And I couldn't help but think of a big fat donkey sitting on a piece of bread. While we were in Rome, two more siblings were born, so we went from 3 kids to 5. And my mom recalls the difference between the northern Italians and the southern Italians. When she would tell the northern Italians that she had 5 bambini, the northerners would say, Madonna, whereas the southerners would say, ah, l'amore. From Rome, we moved to Puerto Rico. We were there a couple of years. 2 more siblings were born there. And from there, we moved to Mexico City, where no more siblings. I loved Mexico City.
Viva!
Yes. So that when my dad told us after 4 years that we'd be moving back to Philadelphia, I was kind of heartbroken because at that point, I was in the middle of my sophomore year in high school and I was dancing in the drill team during half times at the American school with my cute little uniform. I was getting a little more attention from the boys. But life's full of changes and third culture kids learn that relatively young. But after that first part of a bereavement period goes by, you settle down and you think of the possibilities and curiosity takes over because ultimately there's an opportunity to reinvent yourself with every single change. After 10 years in Philadelphia, it was 10 years in Philadelphia. I had the opportunity, I got married to one of my childhood friends and we moved back to Mexico for 20 years where my children were raised. And then 10 years ago, I moved back to the US, not Philadelphia, no cold weather, no scraping ice for me. Wonderful Florida, right? And I've been here ever since. People wonder about third culture kids. There's some of their characteristics include being open and adaptable and flexible, but on the other hand, we may come across as being a little distant or detached. But of course, it makes sense. You wonder if it's worth getting close to somebody if you only have to say goodbye. I know I've gotten that feedback. Some people ask me, well, do you regret not being able to establish roots in one place? And I say, you know, you can't really miss what you don't know. And thinking about what it brought to me, it gave me many different perspectives and curiosity, and my love for people. So no, I don't regret being a third culture kid, and I wouldn't change it for the world. Because you know what? The world was part of the deal.